All right, we will call this meeting to order. This is a special Workforce Housing Advisory Board meeting. Do some strategic planning and see what where we're headed for in 2024. So we'll do a roll call, please.
Member Meeks. Member Allred.
Present.
Chairman Oberhiel.
Present.
Member Russ.
Here.
Member Dowds.
Here.
Member Keenan.
Here.
Thank you. You do have a quorum.
All right, great. Certification of compliance with the resolution 2023-01 for open meeting.
I do certify that this meeting has been posted in accordance with our Opens Meeting Act Resolution 2023-01.
All right, and members, you have before you the agenda for the meeting. Could I entertain a motion for approval of the agenda?
So
I moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion by the membership? Seeing none, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, then the agenda is approved. You also have before you the minutes of the previous meeting. Unfortunately, I was unable to be there, so I will defer to you guys for any discussion or approval or motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes of the previous meeting? Seeing none, signify your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, the same? Seeing none, then the minutes are approved. All right, we'll move on to number 6, discussion and possible action for 2024 calendar year meeting dates. Do we
I'm good with,
every other month?
yep.
Okay.
And maybe stagger in the summer if we, we'll decide that later as we move along.
Okay. Have anybody else have any thoughts, comments on that?
Well, I can tell you, I won't be here in July, but other than that, July is Art Fest.
Mr. Chairman, we'll need to correct the first whereas because it says you all approved it on the 22nd day of November, so we'll update that to today's date.
Oh, okay. Okay. That wasn't part of the meeting that that was back in September. Okay, cool. All right. So with that being said, I'll entertain a motion
I'll make that motion.
and a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the proposed meeting dates for 2024. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition the same? Seeing none, then the proposed meeting dates are approved for 2024. All right, on to the good stuff, strategic planning session, so.
Well, thank you all for being here. I appreciate the fact that we get to handle strategic planning today. You're more than welcome to, I know we're streaming and live and all that good stuff, but I hope to make this an interactive piece if we want to kind of move around or as you feel comfortable throughout the day, just to be able to make your comments. The agenda for today is ultimately at the end of the day, we're going to get a map of what to put together as far as our strategic plan for the Housing Development Board. We're going to start off first initially with kind of a introduction, your backgrounds, and what you bring to the table related to housing or your perspectives and issues. The reason we're doing this is because it gives me an understanding of things to ask as we go through the day, components, questions, items I may bounce back off of each of you as we start to do the strategic planning session. Not that long, quick 30 minutes, we'll knock that out. The next piece of that is we're going to really want to dive into understanding what the previous information has been. So we do have a Village of Ruidoso Affordable Housing Plan, which was done back in May 2015. There was another recent plan that has been done up until was 2019, the housing plan. So we have that item that's been constructed. So we'll go a little bit into those items, what they're doing, what the results were, what the actions of those are moving forward, and how they play into affordable housing. The next piece we're going to do is specifically for this board. We're going to want to create a mission and a vision. What do you see yourselves doing as a board? Are you just executing this plan? Do you see your direction wanting to grow in a much bigger directive? Are we trying to achieve affordable housing for the village? Are we trying to achieve affordable housing for the larger community as a whole? What does that look like? Each one of you represents a different entity that's in front of us. How do we encompass or interact with those entities so that we make housing a community aspect, not a village aspect, those kinds of things. So the mission and vision are going to be constructed with those items in mind. The next thing we're going to do is, I call it a SWOT, Sam calls it TOAS. And we had a back and forth on this, and I've done strategic planning for, the last 15 years. And she brought something up to me that I actually really liked. Understanding the threats first of something that you're doing versus the strengths is a good way to start, because then you can list your strengths off at the end and say, this is how we're going to accomplish these things, even understanding those threats, right? So we're going to work backwards on it. It'll be my first time, but I applaud Sam for kind of throwing that back at me, and it changes things up a little bit. So we will do a TOES analysis of the items that we have in place. By that time, should be lunchtime. We'll probably do a working lunch where we'll do a little bit of brainstorming. And the reason we're going to do some brainstorming is you're going to take that TOES analysis and all of the stuff that we talked about and kind of see what, just general conversation while we're doing lunch. It'll be a working lunch. More of a brainstorming activity of what you think the strategies and objectives should be to help achieve that mission and to help accomplish the goals that we're establishing. Second half of a day, we're going to really buckle down and try and figure out what the goals are to really achieve this plan that we want to put together, and then identify the 50,000 foot level strategies that are going to get us there. What happens at the end of the day is we have a bunch of paper. Sam and I are going to go back and put a shell of a document together. Once that shell is created and you all say, yes, this looks like what we wanted, then we'll put the meat back onto that plan to say, this is how it's going to happen. So the strategic initiatives are really going to be between myself and Sam to give back to the board to say, this is what you have tasked us with. This is how we're going to go achieve those things. This is supposed to be in general, 5-year plan. Now, I'm pretty aggressive, and everything that we've heard about in the village has been, we need workforce housing, we need housing. So my goal is to try and achieve these things a lot faster than 5 years. But to be realistic, we want to make sure that we're putting these down as a 5-year approach. The plans that we've already created are 10-year plans or 12-year plans. And so we're going to try and take some of those strategies, discuss them, figure out, are they achievable? Are we working on them? And if not, why aren't we? And so kind of put those things into perspective. But at the end of the day, another document comes out of that. I always call them battle plans. I know they're tactical plans. So the village does its own strategic planning at the beginning of the year. And at the beginning of each year, each director has to come up with their tactical plan. As part of the tactical plan for Samantha, one of the items that comes out is going to be from this board. What are our achievable goals for the board related to housing? And so you have 4 boards? 3? 3. So she has 3 boards. So there's going to be items from each one of those planning sessions and all the other stuff that she has to do that are going to be incorporated into her tactical plan for the year to say, hey, we need to achieve these goals to make sure that we're accomplishing these 5-year strategic plans annually to achieve our goal. So you get to see the advancement of these plans. We're not putting them on shelves. That's the worst thing we can do. You can have the best plan in the world, but if you throw that on a shelf and it doesn't get executed, what was the point? So the other goal behind this planning session is, in general, a strategic plan can run you anywhere from 30 to 60,000 if you're doing a small plan, and it can run you a lot more if you're doing a bigger plan. We're doing most of this in-house because we want to be able to say, this is what we can accomplish as a team. And if necessary, and we need more resources later on to help enhance these plans, then based on the information that you've done and based on the work you've done, we can grow them much more quickly. So that's kind of the idea of where we're at. any questions related to that kind of stuff for right now?
No, but there's a lot you talked about.
Yes, it's gonna be a lot, but we're gonna take it a step at a time.
Okay.
And so, Sam is not gonna be part of the process for me, running it. She's going to be, just like you, involved with the discussions, all of those kinds of things. She is going to be part of the board for this particular work session so that you can hear her ideas as well. I'll be leading a lot of the practices. So what we're gonna do, I'll break it out before we jump into the first part. So what we're gonna be doing, as we start doing the mission, the vision, and the strategies, we're gonna hand you out a bunch of stickies. You've probably seen some of these processes before. The idea is you're writing down a single idea on a sticky so that you lock it in and you keep it there. And we can save those ideas and put them on these different areas that we're gonna be focusing on, and we have them. So I recently did a session with the Wingfield House Museum Board. I still have all of those documents and all of those stickies, which is like over 400 of them, so that we can continue to grow on those. And I use them as references when I'm doing other work, and so does Stephanie, who's in charge of that board. So we're gonna be doing same to similar items here. With that being said, it is, and I'm gonna keep you all on hopefully a kind of a timed session so that we can keep track with everything. We're only doing this for one day. Usually, this is a process you do in 3 days with a lot more involvement. And so we're gonna be we're gonna be jamming a lot into a little bit of time. But with that being said, let's get started. You all ready?
Start with intros with Charles.
Yes, oh, just a couple of housekeeping items. We do have snacks and water in case you need them. Everyone knows the restrooms are right outside. This is super informal. Please interact however you need to. Stop me, ask questions, however we're gonna do this. This is your meeting, this is your strategic planning session, this is your document, right? It's not mine. What you put into it, the village and the residents from this community will benefit from it, so. All right, so we can start at the end.
Yes, Charles Meeks, work at the Inn of the Mountain Gods, also a resident here in Ruidoso. We employ over 1,000 employees, full-time, part-time, and affordable housing, tax credit housing, the workforce housing anyway, is really important to us. We have a lot of employees that live in the village of Ruidoso Downs, also Tularosa, all the way to Alamogordo. We even have some coming from Roswell, so it's really important for us as a large employer, one of the largest employers in the area, as well as a resident of Ruidoso.
Clayton Allred. I've lived here for 13 years, and during that time, I've been retired for the last 5 years. The 8 years prior to that, I was campus president at ENMU Ruidoso. It was painfully obvious to me that I had employees that lived in Hondo, Capitan, Carrizozo, all around because they simply could not afford housing here in Ruidoso, which led to my interest in discussions with various village officials and others, and ultimately ended up with an invitation to sit on this board. My career is such that I had more than 40 years as an educator that spanned 2 states, public education and higher education.
Thank you.
Me? Okay, Todd, over to you. So I'm the hospital chief executive of Lincoln County Medical Center. Very similar to what you've heard, one of our biggest challenges is finding, if we're successful in recruiting someone, when we're talking about anything from a nurse, to lower skilled situations such as, business office, EVS or those, the housing is always an issue that we're struggling with if they're coming from outside. And what that means is if they're not from outside, then I'm probably stealing from one of the other entities in town, one of their employees, and we're just somewhat shuffling the deck. But individuals that come from outside come in and they just can't find anything. I have one housekeeper, it still just amazes me and stuff, on a housekeeper salary that is paying $800 a month for an efficiency, and it's not a very nice efficiency. But when you think about the percentage of that income for that individual to do that, it's just tremendous. And that might be the norm now, but the problem is there's not any more of those available for the next set to come in and live in that type of situation. And so, anyway, so that's why we're here is, it's definitely limits my ability to recruit nurses. It limits my ability to recruit professional staff. But then, of course, when we talk about EVS and dietary, it's just tremendous, so.
James Russ, I've been a resident, business owner, homeowner in Ruidoso for 20 years. I started actually cleaning Village Hall. I did that for 10 years. I was pretty blessed, and I still am blessed to be in this community. I've been president of the State Realtors Association. I'm a lobbyist. I work very closely with National Association of Realtors, being a director there, so I stay on all of our political important stuff. I try to lobby for private property rights, water, land, so all those types of things are real important to me. I'm very concerned about the newest regulations being proposed in Santa Fe with accessory dwelling units and different types of things that I just don't feel fit every community in this state, that we need to look at all these things closely. And what we're planning to lobby on so far this year is to let the municipalities decide instead of having the state mandate to everyone how to do this affordable housing thing. And I think that's it. I enjoy being part of Ruidoso, and I'm glad that I'm part of this group.
My name is Deborah Dowds. I'm the executive director of the Ruidoso Valley Chamber of Commerce. Been here for about 15 years. Same story. As you know, we have so many chamber members that are understaffed or that just can't find the help because there is no affordable housing here in Ruidoso. Really, there's very little housing whatsoever. I mean, affordable or not, for somebody that wants to come to Ruidoso. We get calls there at the visitor center, 3, 4, 5 times a week. Some, I want to move to Ruidoso. What do you have for long-term lodging? And it's just, I had a lady call the other day and she said, so what area should I look in Ruidoso if I want to move to Ruidoso and find a rental?
Area
It's like whatever you can find, because it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible. So yeah, that's just why I'm on the board is.
My name is Cecile Canan, and I came here from Maryland, where I was involved with affordable housing. We've lived here almost since '97, and I've seen the market just nosedive with the availability of rentals and the Airbnb business going up higher and higher. So the service industry is being locked out of finding affordable rentals. And I think we all suffer from this because there's no one available. Mm-hmm. So I'm a full-time volunteer. I don't have a job, so to speak, and I'm involved with a lot of community activities.
And not only do we have a problem with people trying to move to Ruidoso, our younger people, once, they get out and they graduate, they
don't
have
wanna
no
come.
choice but to leave because there is no housing available.
drain.
Yeah.
Okay. So each one of you brings a very distinct aspect to the board, right? And what's interesting is just like housing and just like the positions you all sit on or come from, there's going to be a different dynamic related to housing. Most people think, oh, okay, affordable housing, this is what it's going to be, and that's how we're going to do it. And it's a 9% tax credit, it's a 4% tax credit, it's housing authority, it's private homes, it's short-term rentals. Everyone has their own perspective on what it is. And so as a board, we have to kind of take a step back and say, what's the bigger picture for us? What do we see? Because all of you brought up several different issues that not just relate to the individual, but it relates to their income, right? There's limitations that we face from grants that we see, whether it's 40% AMI, 60% AMI, 80% AMI, 120% AMI, 100% pure market rates on what we're going to be looking at, whether we're benefiting the individuals that own those items, just like you mentioned in private ownership, or whether it's going to be public-private partnership housing units, or whether it's full-on government housing. So there's going to be several different issues that we're going to have to keep in mind as we start to do these things. The reason I tell you that now is because you're going to have to mention, hey, what about my nurses that need to live in a 2 to 3 bedroom whose 120% AMI may not be met? They may have to meet something higher. Or what about our employees who may not be achieving a lot, whether they're at the inn or whether they're some of our frontline employees that are in the village that are working as part of pieces of the chamber, whether they're those businesses that may fit a different section of that AMI between the 40% and the 90%. How do we work with those things, and where can we come up with those housing items? So all things that need to be discussion points. All right, so we did well, 12 minutes for our introductions. The next piece that we're gonna jump to is kind of our break. Wait, Sam, you didn't go.
You too, we want you to go too.
Okay, I'll go too. I'll go too. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I'm born and raised from Lincoln County. So I've seen a lot of family members, classmates that, you know, are very talented and have to move away to seek work elsewhere to provide for their family. So that's frustrating to me. I get really frustrated with people like, oh, why don't you build it out in Carrizozo or Hondo or, you know, all of the more rural outlying areas. But the fact of the matter is people looking for affordable housing don't usually have reliable transportation. And so whenever I try to talk with others that have capabilities of working with us on workforce housing, they don't seem to understand why they need to be located here where we have more amenities for these families. And so I would like us to just come up with a sustainable approach for maintaining our workforce here that doesn't include increasing salaries exponentially, because that's not sustainable for any business or entity. And so affordable housing is just important for me so we can provide a quality of life for these families that may not earn as much as others. And so
That's really good.
Yep.
Okay, so myself, Michael Martinez, I was at the chamber meeting, I told everyone, usually it's Michael formally, or if I'm in trouble, Mike is usually what I go by. So depending on where we're at, I know how you feel, so I'll respond accordingly. But I've been with the village now, just starting my 7th month, the deputy manager here. I'm starting my 22nd year in government. So I've been doing this for quite a while. Started way back when with the city of El Paso, working initially as a lifeguard in my high school years, kind of moved up the chain, went to college, did grad school. I have 2 masters and a lot of student loans that I'm trying to figure out that. Cut my teeth with the city of Dallas and the city manager's office there. Lived in Dallas for about 10 years. Did internships at the federal level in DC, local level with emergency management and disaster response during Katrina. Moved back to El Paso where I was born and raised. Was the operating officer for the county for a while. Did everything from grants to transportation administration. This is really where I kind of started to enjoy strategic planning. I'm one of those people that thinks that you should be proactive rather than reactive. And the only way that you can really be proactive is by having a plan to work on to make sure you're achieving your goals, to make sure you're addressing any concerns that are either occurring or that may come up. And so that's kind of who I am. I believe I'm a public servant first and foremost, and so I not only represent you all, but, and work for the village, but I represent any community that I work for, right? The residents are the ones that we have to look out for, and so depending on the governing body and the direction they take, it's my job to make sure in conjunction with the manager, it's our job to make sure that any recommendations we give are the best recommendations to achieve whatever policy goals there are, right? I'm not gonna tell you how to do something. You're gonna tell me whether you wanna be the best village, the worst village, the most purple, green, pink, or blue village, and I will give you the 4 options that gets you to be that best village possible. And as a board, we're gonna do the same thing. You ask us to get you to a certain place, we're gonna give you the best pieces that we know how. So that's who I am, that's where I come from, and that's kind of what you're gonna get from me, so.
Awesome.
Yeah. But we're gonna jump into our kind of discussion and review point. So really quick on documents. Who is familiar with this document and who's gone through it and read it? And it's the Affordable Housing Plan for 2015. That's kind of our 10-year plan that expires in 2025.
I've slept since then.
Yeah,
Okay,
I know, I
okay.
haven't seen it.
We did go through it though back in the,
Yeah.
especially those of us who were in the original.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's probably before my time on the board, so I haven't seen it.
Deb's the new one. Actually, Deb missed all the fireworks back in the day. The rest of us have
I just got 'em
have our
secondhand.
scars, so.
And it's okay, right? It's okay. The reason I'm asking that is one of the things that happens, and this is kind of our discussion point. One of the things that happens as elected bodies come on, their priorities change. And so as priorities change, they're usually reactive in the moment. And so they're trying to address whatever situational issue occurred. In this case, with the fire that occurred the McBride fire, suddenly it was a response to how do we address that emergency housing piece? How are we starting to find those? And you all came together and we tried to figure out how to address that situation. In this current moment, it's how do we address workforce housing? We're suffering from it. Well, ironically enough, this document covers a lot of those things. It was written in 2015 and it expires in 2025. It has some good data in it. Now, things have changed since then. But the data that I want to talk about today is what this called for way back when. And so just for your knowledge, the document that we're discussing basically called for multiple housing approaches. It talked about different goals, didn't have the strategies in place to how to achieve them. It said these are some of the ideas that we think can be implemented. And so it was a document that kind of gave us a general approach to what to do. I'm not even sure if the board existed back then when this was done, because it looks like planning and zoning was the one that really focused on what was going on, and there was council members and some other public groups that were part of it, right? So since then, because of the creation of this board, you can tell that it's become a bigger issue, and it needs to be addressed at a more micro level. So that's what we can identify. This document basically says, by 2025, we need a minimum of 400 housing units that will be able to house most of our workforce housing. We need 200 private housing units, 2 to 4 bedroom homes where people need to live. We will need other types of housing, roughly about 80 to 100 units for senior level living that needs assisted living centers. And so between those, you're looking at roughly 600 units of housing that should have come into existence from 2015 till now. I don't think we followed that plan. So,
I think that has increased
yes.
big time.
Yes, it has. And so one of the things I think that we know as a community is that we've blown up since then. Yes, our GRT and the number of people coming in, the STRs that have been created due to policies have changed the dynamic of the village. And so, yeah, a bunch of different things have happened, right? What are some of the things that you all have seen that have kind of either benefited or complicated or created new challenges?
When we first started this, I thought we were pretty successful when we started the board here. We found some different property that was available, purchased it, Wingfield, had everything I thought was ready to go with the shovels being painted gold and getting ready to break ground. And then all of a sudden, phone calls were coming in apparently and threats and so on, and it just went away. So it's like, what the heck, what did we do wrong? That's what we're supposed to do, and we did it.
Those were the NIMBYs, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how can we avoid that, I guess? I mean,
Yeah.
we did everything we were supposed to and got shot down.
So weaknesses and threats, keep that in mind as we move towards that section.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, just like you said, the short-term rental market has blown out of the water. I mean, most of our homes that go for sale, I think, are probably being bought for a second home or for a short-term rental, an investment
Or
property.
people are paying top dollar, you
Yeah,
know?
Yeah.
paying
So
cash.
Even though the market's down about 35%, prices haven't dropped, especially on the lower end stuff, because there's such a demand for it still. Even, I listed one last night for 280,000. There's 5 people going to show it today, which blows me away. And I don't even think it'll sell. It's just they're also wanting a place so bad. A lot of these are locals. 3 of those are local people that are gonna live here full-time. Their realtor were like, well, it's, pick me. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so question between the two of you, because you just brought something up and I think it could go both ways. Do you see that as a strength or a weakness?
Double edge.
Yeah, it is double-edged.
I mean, it's nice that our housing market's strong like that, where it's really failing in other parts of the country, but we've still got to find a solution for this, man. It's not right. People are driving 50 miles each direction to get to
Yeah.
work every day.
Okay. So I'm gonna circle weakness on that, so things to keep on in mind, okay?
When we started this, even before, a long time ago, I think it was before 15 at least, we talked about buying, doing a planned community almost, where there would be regular duplexes, single-family homes, there would be the big complex for people like we were gonna build over at Wingfield, and that the land bank that we did establish with Debbie Lee way back then, that money would help go towards those, like theoretically, and then prices have changed so much. We'd have a developer build a house for $250,000, but we could sell them the house for $200,000. So there would be a good, it would, and the interest rates would be better, and that they couldn't capitalize off the property for 10 years. They had to live in the house and be workforce for that long.
So you just said something that I wanna make note of, the land bank. Who knows how much we have in the land bank?
Not a clue.
50,000?
How much we have in the land bank?
I don't know.
Ah, there you go. All right,
Do you know?
so, I don't. I have an idea of what's budgeted, but I actually don't know if that's accurate. And so I'm not gonna say a number because I will not.
Okay,
give
Right,
so
right.
explain to me really what the land bank is. Is it the money, the village, what's a land bank?
It's something we started setting money aside from a long
Okay.
time ago.
Okay, so it's
So when
just
I
money
first,
we have set aside.
so just as a clarification for how I took that initially, for me, a land bank was what land do we actually have that we were using? And someone's like, no, we actually have a trust fund. And I was like, what? And they said, yeah, we created a land trust to help offset costs related to different items that we were gonna move towards housing. And I said, oh, okay, well, how do we regularly collect money? I said, what do you mean? And I said, well, if we created a fund, I mean,
Right.
I would assume that we have a regular way to collect money, to put it in there, so that we can continuously work towards achieving our goals. They were like, no.
It was supposed to be appropriated, but it wasn't specific. And I think their initial deposit was 26,000 maybe. I might be wrong.
Yep.
That's why I guess 50.
So I think it's somewhere around there, actually, from what I've
26,
seen on paper.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that we need to double check in as a board.
It's a
and-
feasible thing we can just start
yeah.
using now. It's there already, so if we decide
So
to.
Our goal is to identify maybe a strategy, especially if that's an important piece to you all as a board, to figure out how we create reoccurring funds outside of the general fund, because I'm not gonna take money from somewhere else, and figure out how we keep that reoccurring to possibly achieve our goals, right?
Which will upset other boards, but it would
Yeah.
most sensibly come from lodger's tax or something like that. What's
But
affecting our
Airbnbs.
affordable housing the
I'm
most?
gonna walk you through some processes that may give you some out-of-the-box ideas on where we go. They're gonna challenge you, though, because some of them may be a little bit politically difficult. And so we're gonna have to talk about what's important to us not just as a board and as a council and as a community, but what's important to us overall in achieving our goals, right? So we may have to be out there. There may have to be some education piece to the community.
Right.
What does this actually do for you? How does it benefit you? Those kinds of things. So things to think about.
Because there's always going to be those people that think Ruidoso doesn't need to grow, that they don't want to see more people coming into Ruidoso, that they like it just the way it is.
And there's no poverty.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also, with that, Deborah, I agree. But on the flip side is, I don't know of a single person that even has that sentiment that doesn't complain about the lack of restaurants being open
Right.
and different things like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
So-
Or.
Mentalities
yeah.
are changing a little bit,
Yeah.
very slowly.
So what else? What are the other things that you've seen, positive, negative changes, things that have impacted housing, things that may be related to housing or far removed? So I'm gonna throw some things out there, like economic development. My biggest frustration has been that economic development does not recognize housing as a linked issue. And so I have gone on a statewide tirade to figure out how the two get linked, from requesting that we maybe look at legislation to link the two, to identify funding that can come in. Because just as an example, everyone keeps telling me, well, you can't prove that economic development is housing related. And I said, I'm gonna give you a formula or basically a model that we wanna create. We'll flash back and take Memorial Day, right, the weekend. And you pick 25 business locations, and at that point in time, say, how many people should you have working at capacity? How many people did you have working? What were your actual sales? And how many people did you work with? How many of our businesses actually collect that data? I don't know. That's one issue. Second issue is, if we can actually identify that information, and most of the restaurants probably can, you can turn around and say, it's a 3 to 4 hour wait for restaurants because I had X percent of staffing. If I had 100% of staffing or 90% of staffing, what that does is it allows me to do a turnover ratio of people that are coming in at X percent. So instead of waiting 4 hours, you're sitting down and eating in 55 to an hour and 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That is a completely different ratio of what we're working with. And so that creates economic impact. So why are those people not here? Because you have need to work signs or hiring now signs on the front of your stores. Well, because we can't get anybody to come because they don't have a place to live. That linkage is there, right? And so showing that economic impact of the lack of people being here and associating it with them not living here, that's easy to prove. And so those are the things that I'm throwing out there as an example. So economic development, transportation, what other issues around housing exist that maybe we don't think about or look at or have? Just curious.
Transportation.
Transportation is a big thing. I'm on the Transportation Committee, and trying to find drivers who are qualified is very hard. They have to have a clean background.
Which goes back to workforce housing.
Yes. We've tried. We had transportation going to Carrizoso. That had to be discontinued. It's hard to find qualified drivers who don't have a DUI or a drug background.
Well, I think what you're saying, and to me, I think that's one of the areas that has, at least from a village standpoint, our surrounding governmental entities, whether that be the county or the Downs or whoever, they talk a good game, but they never show up at the table.
Yeah.
Just to be frank. The reason we don't go to Carrizozo
That's
anymore is the
agreed.
county decided not to fund the
Pursuit, yes.
transportation anymore,
Yeah.
and Carrizozo didn't either. And so, the bill gets footed to Ruidoso when that's not, and at some
Exactly.
point, the village has to sit back and say, we can't fund the entire county, even though we do, but
Yeah.
we can't. And I think that's a problem, is how do you get those entities to understand the importance of, some of these issues I think the village has tried to take on head first, but maybe the other government entities haven't done that.
And that is definitely a big deal, because we could do a lot of stuff in the Downs, but then they just don't even know how to participate, let alone get there to do so.
I think the education component, they don't understand, and maybe they don't even know they don't know. And so,
Mm-hmm. Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
They don't even know how to get there.
Yeah.
So do you, from an education standpoint, because I think that's a good point Sam brings up, I've heard a couple of you mention, maybe people don't know, or, you know, I haven't seen a person that, yes, believes this way, but is disappointed in restaurant times, or what are some of the other issues people need to be educated on? I'm just curious.
So the short-term rentals is another big deal for sure. That takes away from the long-term rentals. That everybody is so concerned with making a buck and doing something that there's a very big shortage of long-term rentals because they'd much rather just rent it, you know, nightly.
So, I've asked questions, and honestly, I thought I was gonna be thrown out of a window.
Right, I get
off
it.
the edge.
And I'm being objective being a realtor,
Yeah.
exactly. With some other things I'll share later too.
So we still allow people, what about policies or ordinances or different things that look at not stopping completely? Because that's not the case, right?
Right, right.
So as a realtor, my question to you would be, your goal is to make sure that properties in general, commercial and residential, are strong. From most of you all, from a resident's perspective, not your private side perspective, you want to make sure that your neighborhoods are safe, protected, and that you don't have a bunch of people making a bunch of noise, doing things that we know they do now, and trying to figure out how to control that. But we also know that the livelihood and the economic blood of this community is directly tied to them, right?
Right.
Okay, so how do we work with all three of those things? Just a thought, I don't need an answer now. A thought, because my pitch is, what if we have more of, and this is where P and Z and
Yep.
Sam's team come in. And I've been told this before, and I'd like to get your all's take on it. I've been told that the village really doesn't have a plan or a direction or a vision related to planning. And so, and that directly relates to housing and the NIMBYs. Where are we gonna put housing when it comes in? Where are we gonna put certain things when they come in, right? Let's go to business for a second. If business comes in tomorrow, we're just gonna randomly build on Meacham and Sutterth and allow them to go in there? Or we have a zoning map, but there's stuff that can come in on Paradise, or there's stuff that can come in off of Gavilan Canyon, or there's stuff that can go into certain residents today that are businesses.
Rio Street.
Yeah. Is that something that we should really want or need? And I'll give you an example of a resident, or a couple of residents that are, you know, raising Cain about what's happening. We have a business that wants to come in and open, which is creating jobs and creating GRT. That business is right next to a regular lodger that has a lot of people, but there's a lot of noise that comes from that business. And so the two businesses are fighting, saying, we don't want you. And suddenly it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought we wanted local business to develop and to grow. So us having to reevaluate where we put things and how we put things, I think is important. And I don't know, that's my thought. I'm asking you all, what do you think?
Going back to the short-term rentals again, I think one thing would be good too, at some point, and I brought it up before, is that we should reopen the short-term rental ordinance. We haven't looked at it in over 5 years, and we could definitely adjust it and make it better, because we've learned a lot from that. One issue I know that we have is the complaint procedure on short-term rentals. They call the cops at night, but half the time, Katie or whoever, the computer's down, so she can't even cross-reference to see if it's actually a rental or who it is and stuff, and all those types of things. I have never even heard of anyone having their permit revoked for ordinance violation. Has there ever been any?
Yes, we have revoked somebody that was refusing to take their fire pit out of their yard.
Okay, so different than noise violations and
We do
guns?
stay up on those. The last one, we were able to satisfy the neighbors because they put a noise meter in the home, and so anytime it was triggering, then they would contact the realtor.
See, I just call the realtor as the broker, I call him in bed at 2 a.m. and say, dude, this is going on. That's how I handle it. But there's, you know, that would be a big, I hear from a lot of neighbors and stuff, just how maybe we should look at that at some point. And try to model it with our, with our affordable housing so that there's a break or an incentive, maybe an incentive for these people with short-term rentals to consider doing an 18-month or do some sort of long-term rental instead. It would be nice. Maybe even the land bank money could be used for that. Who knows? I don't know.
Or some sort of property tax incentive to,
Well,
Right, that too, exactly,
Yeah.
perfect. Yep,
for like long-term rental.
for long-term rentals, yeah.
right.
Well, the other thing I was wondering is could there be a
That's great.
modification? I don't know what the rules are around lodger's tax. I know it goes to, activities such as tourism, activities and those. But could there be a portion of the lodger's tax pulled out to be going to the land bank or to
Right,
something?
I said that a minute ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to look at that.
So, yeah,
possibly.
is
Thanks for
that
backing
a
me, though.
possibility? Would that be?
I think
So-
it
You'll
is.
make some people
I'm
mad.
gonna tell
I know
you all
that.
the same thing. I've got lodger's tax over here. I think there's other ways.
Well, the
But
fees
yes.
generated from the permits themselves, not necessarily the remittance of the tax, but the fees. And with so many permitted STRs, I think we could look at increasing the fees as well, because
Yeah.
I heard that Alto Lakes charges $800 a year for their permit, and we're at about $150 a year.
Yeah.
Alta Lakes is trying to shut down the.
Overwhelming.
Yes, they had a vote on that
opposition,
recently.
So,
So I think, and to Sam's point of how money is used, I'm a big believer in residents should pay their fair share. But if you're a resort or tourism community, those people, and I say those people, those tourists that come in, and we love the tourists, they should also pay a fair share. And so I think what a lot of concerns and alarming issues are is related to when you mention things like special districts or when you mention extra taxes, local residents get scared, right? And that's part of the education piece. And it's how are we going to let them know that we're trying to protect them, whether it's through lodger's tax, whether it's through a different component, whatever that vehicle is for the financing. How are we gonna let them know that it's not impacting them? It's collecting money to benefit them, right? And so
Right.
those are things I need you to think about. That's high level, what we need to discuss. And so those are the things I think that are important. You guys have triggered on a lot of items that I think we're gonna discuss, and I'm gonna ask you on our TOES analysis, what we should look at, based on some of these things, because that's gonna start bringing out our true issues, and that's gonna help you identify your strategy. So we have about 10 more minutes. Do you wanna work through this or take a quick break? And then when we come back, we'll start the TOES analysis. You can work through it or take a break. It's up to you all.
I'd like to add one other comment.
Sure.
And this basically is piecing together some of the remarks that I've heard in this discussion. And that has to do with us addressing a problem that is not just a local problem. It is an area, it is a regional problem.
Nationwide.
Yeah, national,
But,
exactly.
yeah, national as well. But when you look around at the stakeholders and entities involved, and in particular governmental entities, there's not a recognized cooperative spirit out there. In fact, I shouldn't be facetious. There is a conflicted, if not, sometimes there have been some cooperative efforts that have been achieved, but most of the time, the governmental entities are siloed to the point that they're self-absorbed in their own actions or possibly conflicted. So there are policies, there are approaches on the part of these different governmental entities that have absolutely nothing to do with a larger problem that impacts them all.
So I think you hit the nail on the head. I actually think that's probably our largest issue as a community. My next question,
Statement, please.
don't worry, it's all here.
Yeah,
You know, it's hard to think about fixing it when one side wants the whole enchilada and the other side is just eating the crumbs because they can't.
right. Well, I think perhaps to build on your successes, I know that basically the county is without planning and zoning ordinances. The village very much has those, and the county has turned to the village for a extraterrestrial, I'm not sure what the terminology is, but at least that one example exists of a joint effort. I don't know whether to call it collaborative or cooperative, but at least there is a joint effort in that. I think about the dispatch, shared dispatch. So if you can build on your successes.
Those two
Well, that
things
just
don't
went out the
exist.
roof yesterday, or a couple of weeks ago, so.
There's no extraterritorial zoning in the county, and I don't think consolidated dispatch is gonna happen with the county, and, I mean, that's where I get extremely frustrated with them, because I feel like they enjoy the amenities that Ruidoso provides, and the tourism, and the restaurants, and
And the revenue.
the revenue, and people, I tell them time and time again, people wouldn't be building these $1 million homes in Alto if there wasn't a restaurant to go eat at, or, you know, all of the exciting tourism opportunities that come from Ruidoso and the Inn of the Mountain Gods, and so it's frustrating, and they don't understand it, and that's what their revenue is generated from property tax, and so,
So weakness, I'm gonna circle that as a weakness. What I will say is this, I'm a very strong believer in building bridges, even where bridges have been burned. And so, I don't mind going and having discussions that have been had 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 months ago, that may have collapsed. I think you need to continually work at that. We just recently brought someone on, they're special events oriented, but they are also directly focused on strategic partnerships. And so that's Eddie Ryan. And he's been trying to reach out to different entities, trying to build them from a business side, but also from a government side, and to try and figure out how we partner with those. One of the items that we were talking about just from land-related use was for the school board, and how the hospital and the school have traded lands, and in doing so, we now have a different entity that we can work with, or possibly work with, to look at some future housing developments, if necessary, right? Because there's a shortfall of teachers, and there's a shortfall of housing for teachers. There's a shortfall of nurses, there's need for nurses to be housed. There's a shortfall of frontline employees, whether it's at the inn, whether it's here. And we need to figure out how to be able to work with the surrounding community from a regional perspective on how to achieve those goals. So things I think you need to focus on as well and discuss as they come up. Just so you know, from my perspective, I'm a regionalist when it comes to policy initiatives. I do think that we need to have collaborative approaches to solving bigger problems. And so I think the hardest part is getting those collaborative agreements in place and those collaborative relationships to be able to say, my dad, just a quick story. So my dad growing up would tell me, and he was in the same line of business, right? He would say, you can't please everyone. Stop trying to please everyone. I said, Dad, my goal is not to please everyone. I will come to the table with a compromise. That compromise means everyone's not happy, but they all get to walk away with the peace that they can live with. And so I think we have to learn how to compromise from a regional perspective on any goals that we're gonna start to try and accomplish, because we as a village can't do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
You as your individual entities, you can't do it by yourself. So, heck, going back to the college, students need a place to live too. There aren't any dorms. How can we partner with the college, the hospital, the employee piece, the inn? How can all of us come together and then turn around and say, okay, entities, we know we need teachers in these other places. How can we focus on achieving a better goal? And some people will tell you the NIMBYs and things like that. We don't want certain things in our backyard. The second you start saying, you know, we're gonna use certain tax credits or certain pieces, oh, no, that means this. And there's a stereotype, right, of what's gonna happen. Okay, so let's say that's a threat or a weakness. Let's move it over here and put it in a parking lot. Outside the box, how can we address that issue? Maybe you're already paying for this issue and you don't know about it. How do you reallocate that money and maybe reduce the amount of money you're spending and end up with a huge benefit that we all can come to the table with and say we're good with. Now suddenly the community is like, oh wait, this is a private investment. It's not this. Well, it technically is. It's something different. It's a business coming in and doing it, and they can't really argue against it, right? Because it is your nurses, your doc, whatever we're doing, that benefits us. So things to think about. Quick break before we jump in, unless there's some last.
I just wanted to add, I think that is part of the problem is when you say workforce housing, people have the perception that it's low-income housing.
Yes.
They don't understand that we're trying to do something for the employees, for the workers, for the nurses, for the teachers, for the firemen and the, you know, the people that you really can't do without in our community. But they see workforce housing and they automatically think low income.
Oh, yeah. Quick question. Sorry, I'm gonna keep us on time. Try and break or work through it?
Work through it.
Good? Okay.
Yeah.
You guys are.
I'm good.
Yeah.
We're gonna get
What's a break?
Yeah, I do want to bring up one thing, because I want to make sure I don't forget this, because I'm notorious for that, so. I think we also need to look at what the village does to limit development. And I'm going to give you an example. So I actually approached, I think this is where Samantha was in her position and stuff. I had the potential ability to purchase some land, look at putting in some, you know, using like the shipping crates and building something like that. We don't allow that in this village. We make it impossible to do that. You see those in all these other communities throughout the, you know, in fact, I think Santa Fe had a big promotion just the other day. And when I approached the village about, you know, what's do this, first thing is, well, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this. You gotta put wood on the outside. Well, we don't want wood on the outside of something in this place anymore. I think we've gotten smart and we realize that, but that's still in our code.
At least someone's
And so
sticking
I
up for our
think
zoning laws.
What are we doing as a village that, you know, since I've been on this, I bought a house in Las Cruces for my son to go to school, and he was on the very edge of Las Cruces and everything. They have built another 400 houses just across the street from where his house is and everything. At the same time, we haven't even really done anything.
Right,
I mean,
right,
we
yeah.
put mobile homes in. And
Yeah.
so the village has ordinances that is prohibiting development. And I think for us to sit and talk about, we've got to talk about that. And we need to have an obvious discussion about why do developers not want to come here and develop? They're willing to build $1 million homes, but why are they willing to go to Las Cruces and build, but they're not willing to build here?
So the short answer to that, and you're part of the group, so you don't get to, you can talk all you want, but you can't fight. No, I'm just kidding. So the short answer to that is, one, the type of land that we have available to build on.
Yep.
But
And I agree with that.
an even larger concern for me, and Sam and I have had this conversation before, is we are one of 50 of the largest communities in the state, and we are one of 12 that don't have a master planned approach to how to develop this community. That's the biggest thing I keep on harping on her. When do we get to do the update to the comprehensive plan? Because I'm gonna push planning and zoning to have that exact discussion, right? But what I'd also like to do is have you as a board bring that concern to planning and zoning, bring that concern to the council, bring that concern to other entities, and say, hey, we have this issue. This is our concern. We represent the ideas of the council as well. It's our job to try and get these things in, because here's the issue. Our issues overlap with other committees, just like theirs overlap with yours, right? And so as a responsible group, I think it is pertinent for you to sit in front of another board and say, hey, we're doing this, but these are the things you need to work on or address or look at because they're impacting us. We believe that it is limiting for us to achieve this goal, which has been tasked to us by council because of these other issues, right? Someone mentioned the siloed issues related to what the other governing bodies are, right? They're in their own positions.
That's what I was gonna say.
I think we are open to some degree from a department perspective of, hey, we work together, we need to get these things addressed. But from a board perspective, how many of you know everyone on planning and zoning? How many of you know everyone on lodger's tax?
A lot of them.
And you know what I was just thinking? We overlap with the utility committee big time, because without the infrastructure, it's not gonna look favorable for development if
Yes.
there's no water or sewer there. And so I think that,
So again, I'm a big believer in development done the proper way. In my previous job, I was a manager in Sunland Park, and talking about 400 homes in Las Cruces, we had 3 developments of 700 homes apiece. And so those are master plan communities that had to come in. We didn't have infrastructure. So what tools are allotted to us by the state, and how do we develop? Again, this is a planning piece. We're going a little off tangent, but I think it relates to housing to some degree. There's ordinances known as PID ordinances. Those are tools. They're public improvement districts. So from a realtor perspective, if they're assessed a tax on the back end anyway, and you now have a planned community that has trails, streets, and sidewalks, you're gonna pay for that.
Yep.
Because that's an amenity that you're looking for, or
Or
that
subscribe
people are
to it,
looking for.
exactly.
Exactly. So when you come in, it's not a tax to someone new, to someone that's already living there. It's whoever's gonna live in this neighborhood is paying for that to be done up front, right? It's an incentive to a builder, because that builder then comes and says, oh, wait a minute, you're gonna incentivize me to actually put infrastructure in and I get a return? I'll put my money up front, pay for the infrastructure, and then with the houses, you guys will have everything you need. So yeah, I'll give you your amenities, whether it's parks, whether it's green space, whether it's looking at how we control. I mean, I don't know if many of you heard the council meeting and the insurance piece that was done yesterday, but there's some pretty scary things out there. We're not being able to insure homes because of defensible spaces, because ISO has issues related to these items.
Commercial is horrible right now.
Exactly. So maybe our developers, our builders, our contractors, we have to get everyone on par. And I know I'm getting off topic, but this semi-relates to this stuff. We have to be able to work with our other groups, our other entities to say, look, if we want to build this, we're going to need infrastructure. But if we're going to build the infrastructure, why don't we incentivize someone to do it for us? Why are we paying for it? How are we being cost efficient? And how are we being good stewards of taxpayer dollars to make sure we're not just blowing them up with excessive taxes? How do we control what we have now and still accomplish that goal, right? So those are things that we need to look at.
Some of those areas, you know, we should do a study group on our zoning and look at some of the areas that could be converted over to multifamily, you know, in existing zoning areas, maybe down there by Close Drive and stuff. I don't know. There's some places. The other big deal is the Downs. That's where the most feasible property is to do all this kind of stuff that we could rezone easily, but it's not our property to rezone. So we gotta somehow bridge the gap with these other municipalities, you know, and so I've been here a long time. I haven't seen it happen yet. I sure would love to see it.
And it's not that easy, just like what Todd was saying earlier, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I bought several lots around here, and my idea was buy brand new mobile homes and put them on there, you know, quickly. And so I got the land, did all that, and then one of my properties, brand new home was on there, zoned correctly, all that. I was filed a sewer permit and was denied, and asked why. And they said, because there's no sewer lines available to you. Well, I called the plumber, and he came out, he came out and looked at it, he goes, there's a line right there you can tie into, I can tie you in a couple hours. And so I refiled my paperwork, sent it back in. I couldn't, and I was told that that pipe over there, you can only put 3 tie-ins there. Well, I called the plumber again, and he's also a septic guy. He said, that's my line, I put it in about 10 years ago, and you can have 3 on there, there's only 1 on there. So I filed my paperwork again. Anyway, long story short, denied again, so I had to put a septic tank in there, and it cost me $20,000. And they don't finance that, so I had to write a check for that. So I'm just saying, that was just my problem I had with the, you know, municipalities, what do you say? Can't say it, but anyway.
So to that point, random question. How many people know the percentage of homes, I'm curious to know if you know this, How many know the percentage of homes that are on septic versus sewer?
In just the village
Just
limits?
the village.
It's probably more on septic, wouldn't it be? Like way
Yeah, it's
more.
more, it's probably 60% on septic, is that close?
60 sewer, 40 septic.
Wow, okay, that's
Well,
good.
Really, huh?
Well,
Yep.
and the ordinance said, I even made copies of that and turned it with my paperwork, said in the ordinance, it says you must tie into city sewer if it's available to you. And the
Yep.
pipeline was from here to that door.
Yep.
And then in 3 to 5 years, they're gonna be tearing up those roads that one of the properties are at and putting a new sewer there. And I'm gonna have to tie into that and smash my $20,000 septic tank and pay for it.
And that's what's frustrating, because that's what drives up the affordability, you know,
Right.
you could have been a lower rent, but now you have to tack that onto your renter. It's
Yep.
frustrating.
And it's slowed down my other properties too, so it's like, guys, and they know me.
It's so hard to get those septic lines into some of these neighborhoods though, because of the solid rock. That's the biggest
yeah.
issue. I would think all that new development up on Chavez and stuff, somehow we can link that
Yeah.
into Forest Heights at some point. It's really close, and the elevation's high enough where it could, it's just hard, I don't know how all that works.
Yeah, whatever happened with that property?
Infrastructure is a weakness, really
Yeah.
quick. Okay, we're all on the same page.
Yeah,
There you go, infrastructure's a weakness.
yeah.
And that's the biggest thing with our, across
Yeah.
the state, with the, you know, the proposals in the legislature coming up is that they're gonna tax these weak infrastructure systems in Albuquerque and different places where they still have clay sewer pipes, and water was, for every subdivision, they had to prove up water rights before they got approved a long time ago. So if you take a 700 home subdivision and turn it into 1,400 homes theoretically overnight by allowing every single person to build an accessory dwelling unit in their backyard, that's not necessarily the answer either. We've got to look at those precious commodities that we have in New Mexico, you know?
And that's a big issue, right? Resources and natural resources. Water is a big issue
Yep.
for us. And so, with the more people that come in and with the higher use of water, how does that directly impact the village? I mean, those are things that we have to consider. And those are
Especially
things
these droughts right now. You
Yeah.
know, I'm sure, I don't know
in a
the.
drought. Our
Right.
snow hasn't come yet, right?
I was just up in Eagle Creek. I mean, I'm sure the pumps are barely pulling the water and it couldn't be that great right now.
No, you're exactly right. And so we're in drought conditions. So things I think we need to think about, that are gonna be important. What we're gonna do now is, let's pass out all of the stickies. Do we have those? They already have them. Awesome. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna start with, threats, right? TOWS, yeah. So what we're gonna do is everyone write down 5 threats. You get 5 minutes. Everyone write down 5 threats.
One per sticky.
1 per sticky. 5 threats that you believe impact housing.
And when you're saying threat, you mean like the normal term, external items? I mean, that's,
Internal or external that you believe are threats to housing currently. So eat 1 sticky per threat. Write down 5. And if you finish and we haven't finished the 5 minutes, come up with some more.
Where's our board to put them all on? That little one right
We're
there?
gonna get some paper and we're gonna start
Okay.
sticking them around the room. And this is gonna be interactive, so one of you gets to write as we do this.
Oh, no.
Switch. Do any of y'all need a water or anything?
I'm gonna need one in a little bit. I'm still good for now, but in a little bit. Thank you.
Oh, great. About 2 minutes left.
How did you get the whole day off?
I booked it far enough out that I could block the calendar, so.
It was your plan.
It
for
was
the
so
day,
funny.
that's right.
This is honest truth. Dr. Rath was in my office yesterday and she looked at at my calendar. She goes, I'm leaving because that just makes me depressed. I'm like going, you're a doctor. And still, my calendar, it's just blown up nonstop. It's crazy.
Yep.
I gotta send my FYI too, real quick.
Yeah, everyone kept on telling me, oh, you gotta get prepared for the snow on.
I know.
I don't think we're getting it. So it's
Yeah.
snowing like
No, the
that, but
snow's done.
yeah.
We got burned on that one.
I think El Nino has passed us by.
Yeah.
It's concerning. I mean, that's a big deal, the snowpack, the water that comes from it.
I have 7 springs on my property in there. Slow.
All right, that's time. Okay, who wants to write? All you're really writing is threats, and then we're gonna post everything up there. All right, Christie.
Bring it forward. My eyesight isn't what it used to be.
I can see that. I just can't see this.
I know, me too.
I got an eye doctor appointment though tomorrow, so we're gonna get some new glasses.
All right, who wants to start? What side do we start with? Let's start with you.
Threats I see is transportation.
So you have your transportation. Okay, who else? We're gonna put this right here, so you don't have to write. Oh, okay. You can, I appreciate it. 'Cause we're gonna end up writing something. Who has transportation? All right, 1,
Uber included.
2, yes. Anyone else with transportation?
I don't know what Charles put down. Let me just look.
Sam, did you have
I
transportation?
didn't.
Okay. Well, if he does, I'll put it in. Okay, so we have transportation. Everybody else. Or actually, no, I'm sorry, we'll start here and then we'll,
Okay.
NIMBY attitude.
NIMBY, okay? We'll take that one.
I should have put that one as much as we've dealt with it, so.
2, 3. Sam, no?
No.
Okay. Yeah, put that next to it. What else do you have?
Traffic congestion
Okay,
and roads.
roads and traffic. No?
I put infrastructure. I don't know if you want that as
That's
part of it.
probably about the same thing.
Okay, I'll work with infrastructure. It may be the
That's a
bigger
good one.
overarching one.
Yeah.
Potholes.
No? Sam? No. All right. Okay.
It helps to write those words above it truthfully, like you did.
We're gonna consolidate them
Okay.
into some, so we'll finalize with words
Yep.
at the end.
Sorry.
All right, Charles, on the ones that you have written down, do you have anything related to transportation, NIMBY or public perception, infrastructure, or roads?
I have village approvals and public-private partnership.
Okay, so not there yet.
Well, I have a lack of education, is that?
Yeah,
That's NIMBY. Yeah, that's NIMBY for sure,
Put that on the-
because we can overcome that obstacle. Short-term
So-
rentals, I'm sure, I know a few of us have that one, so. Sorry.
water,
What, that's infrastructure.
Okay,
I'll put that
Well, I
towards
meant
resources.
surface water and groundwater, that,
Yeah.
not necessarily pipes to flow it.
Let's make that resources.
There you
So we're
go.
gonna-
Okay.
Let me do that, so I'll take your
Natural
water.
resource, perfect.
Resources, like another.
Okay, we'll do that one, we're gonna put it on here, but anyone with resources? No?
I guess in a sense, I have availability of land and zoning, isn't that sort of
Yeah, I
a
put
resource?
appropriate land availability.
Yeah.
I think that's more planning.
Okay,
Okay,
We're gonna stick
all right.
with it.
okay.
housing, or,
Well, no, because we're gonna consolidate them.
Oh,
Yeah. Housing?
sure,
Okay, I'm gonna take your housing. Anyone else have housing?
I have short-term rentals.
yes.
all
Okay,
falls
let's
in.
do that. We'll group it and see what we get. Okay, no? Last one?
Oh, I had lack of workforce.
Lack of, oh, is that what,
No, but that's what I just thought.
let's write it down and then I'll take it. Okay. Anyone else have lack of?
Well,
workforce?
mine's, I mean, I put increasing demand for property/employees due to tourism increase.
That goes in there.
Bigger one?
It's just you're more wordy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let's move over. Deborah, what do you have?
I have, high interest rates making buying homes unaffordable for the, workforce.
Okay, so high interest rates, financing,
That's a good one. Think about that.
property issues, no? Anyone?
That increases in property values.
Okay.
Yep, that's good, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, those go together.
All right, what else do you have?
Available land shortage.
Okay, land shortage. Anyone else with land issues?
Obviously, that's a big one. Look, even Sam has that one.
Mine was topography.
It's a part, that, oh, okay.
I have one that's kind of similar, it says vacant and abandoned properties. Do you want that with that?
No, that's a different one. That's like reuse, different things.
Sounds kind of like an opportunity.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds like opportunity.
Local contractors are too busy.
Okay,
Yeah.
local contractors. Anyone have anything related to local contractors? Okay. What else? That's it?
That's all I had.
Shortage of multifamily developments, current.
I'm gonna put this under the housing one. I think it
Okay.
goes there. Let's put this one under our housing. What else?
Lack of cooperation between municipalities.
Okay.
Everybody's got that one too.
That was mine. Yeah,
Took a while, but all mine went away, so.
and public-private partnership, not
Yeah,
being,
I
not
think
really
that
being
falls
there.
under there.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it.
Would being a seasonal destination be a threat? I mean,
It can be.
I mean,
I think,
for rentals, because, you know, you have Memorial Day packed, you have horse racing packed, then you have these
I think
January,
you have an
February.
opportunity, and I think it's a, I think it could fall under any one of them, so it depends on how you define it.
What about lack of medical specialties?
Well, let's wait to see what we have.
Oh,
Let's say
okay.
We gotta finish what we've got first. All right, anyone else? Todd, what do you have left?
Building ordinances,
Building ordinances, okay?
Funding, lack of funding.
Well, let's wait. Anything with building ordinances?
Oh, excuse me.
That would go with, wouldn't that go with existing land and all that though? Maybe not.
Yeah, I do think let's put it under, that's the same one. Let's put it under the lack of land piece.
And the last one I put and is, and I don't know how to word, this is how I word it, I'll just read it. State's unwillingness to recognize Ruidoso's unique situation when it comes to the grants.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
because there's no poverty up here, remember?
There's a lot,
There's no poverty up here.
well, that's
Yeah.
one. Second thing is when you look at the tax incentives and stuff, you have
Right.
to be,
so I'm gonna put legislative issues is the bigger
that's
one.
fine.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything related to legislative issues? Okay, so we're gonna, that's how we'll define that. Okay, so you're done. Clayton, what do you got?
Lack of funding.
Lack of funding. Okay,
That's a good one.
anyone else with lack of funding? It's a big one. Charles, what's the last one? You good?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay, so, based on what we have for threats, we've got, we have transportation, we have public perception, we have, lack of infrastructure, we have natural resources, we have housing shortages, we have workforce, legislative issues, local contractors. So, does local contractors being busy, do you think that can go under lack of workforce, because that's why they're busy? Or are
Or
they busy for
qualified.
different reasons?
They have a lack of workforce too. They're busy building the $3 million homes.
Yeah.
That's the
Yes.
problem.
That's,
I'm
yeah,
gonna move this under
No.
lack of workforce, is that okay?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not exactly the same, but they're so
Yeah, they're
closely.
Right, right.
Maybe you can move that one to governmental, the one I put about the state that you had there,
Okay,
so.
so what we're gonna do is, what I think we need to do, just so you know where we're going, high-level threats that we're gonna be able to make a living, right? So these are the issues you all have. Imagine the issues that would come out from the community. They may have the very same ones, but they also may have different ones. So we wanna make our threats generic enough that our things, that everything falls under them, so we can try and capture them. Now, that doesn't mean we only have 2. We may have 10, but they're expansive in the sense that we can start grouping those things in there. Sam, I missed you, right? Did I get all of yours?
Yes.
Okay,
Can
sorry.
you repeat those one more time though?
So far, and we're gonna see if we need to consolidate any stuff.
Okay.
So we have transportation, public perception, infrastructure, natural resources, housing in general. Housing is the issue of housing. Legislative, workforce, lack of cooperation between entities. We'll come up with a term for that, whatever that may be. And then funding. Okay? Are any of these, do we think they're all specific, or do we think they fall under each other in any way, shape, or form?
Well, funding could go either way. It could, depending on what you mean by funding, it could go under legislation, or it could go under the inability to like get a home loan, so,
So I'm gonna actually kick it back and say, I think funding is the main topic.
Yeah.
And those other items could be subsets of funding.
right.
So let's keep funding as a bigger picture. Now, my next question to you all is, do we all think these are threats? Would they fall under a different category that you think, hey, you know what? It might be more of an opportunity than a threat. It might be more of a weakness than a strength. It might be more of a, how do we see these?
They're obstacles for sure.
Yeah.
Like transportation, to me,
It's-
that's an opportunity, right?
And a
I mean,
weakness.
we know that it's an issue out there, but it's not necessarily causing a, it's a weakness, and then with it, I think, if you go back, I'm like you, I trained our SWAT instead that way, so.
So threats, right? Threats are things that limit us from doing things, that don't allow us to achieve those goals.
Well,
Weaknesses are things that we need to shore up so that we can actually accomplish them. But we're either already doing them now, or we aren't doing them and need things to get them done.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the differences on the threats versus the weaknesses.
So transportation,
Yes, to some degree.
Yeah, so-
We can have some internal threats.
Well, I think, to me, transportation is a threat. I don't know how many times I have been asked, I can't get to work. I have no car, or,
but I think it's a weakness more.
well, you can look at it both ways. A weakness is I can't get drivers, and if you don't have drivers, the buses sit there.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. If transportation was the overall piece, and we said it was a weakness, you could identify lack of funding, you could identify lack of drivers. So I think, just to make sure we're on the same page, I think transportation could technically qualify as a weakness rather than a threat. Because we do have transportation now, sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So we do have it, but we can work with it. So would it be okay if we move transportation to weaknesses instead of the threat?
It's fine.
Okay. So we're gonna move this over here. It's gonna be our weaknesses. So threats, NIMBY, I do think that's a threat.
Yeah.
I do think that's an issue. Now, keep in mind the things that you're gonna be thinking about moving forward. What's the opportunity with NIMBY? Education, right? So just things to think about as we move forward. So definitely a threat. So, all right, Chrissy, this is where we can start writing the formal. So we'll take transportation off and we'll do public perception. Are you okay with public perception being the overarching piece? Okay. So public perception. Infrastructure. Threat or weakness?
I think it's a weakness,
Weakness, why?
because we have control over infrastructure, and we can, I don't know, I think it's a weakness, because it's not something that, doesn't exist at all, it's just something we need to improve on.
And it's not stopping us, it actually would help us, right? So the opportunity is growth of infrastructure to some degree, or planning.
I agree with Samantha.
Yeah.
Anyone else? It's your time.
Well, the only thing that I would add is I think that depends upon your perspective. And since we're sitting in Village Hall planning for the village, absolutely, yeah, I agree.
So, but other perspective is what?
Some other entity may look at it differently is the point that I'm making. I think this is the correct perspective for us.
I do think we need to be aware of that, because I think you're right.
Yeah.
We have a person right now who is asking to figure out whether they can, what was the term? De-annex from the village, but keep their infrastructure. And so it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I don't think that's the route.
Yeah.
Okay, so infrastructure weakness versus threat. Weakness?
Weakness, I think.
Now, do we just have infrastructure on there? That's not the land, right?
No, that's not the
Okay,
land, this
yeah.
is infrastructure.
Okay.
Okay, next, so natural resources.
I think that's a threat, because if we don't get any snow or rain or.
Yeah, we really can't control it.
We can't control it, right?
It's out of our-
Water, wind, fire, all those natural resources or natural disasters, right? Things that could impact us. So, threat, right?
Yep.
So let's do natural resources. I'm gonna skip interest rates really quick and put it down here. And we'll have a conversation with that and funding. Legislative will stay here. What's this one? Housing. Okay, is housing a weakness or a threat? Short-term rentals, weakness or threat?
I think it's a threat.
It's like a domino effect.
The reason why I say it's a threat is unless we're gonna pass ordinance that don't allow people to sell homes to buyers that are going to do that, can we control that? We're a
Yeah.
capitalist society, and I don't think we can control
Yeah, I
that.
don't think we can.
The only thing we
So
can
to
do
me,
is a
that's a threat.
moratorium. We can set rules and regulations on short-term rentals like other communities have, but then we're still invading on private property rights.
I think it's a threat, because I don't think anyone has the political will to take away the.
Well, so,
Yeah, and get voted in again.
what about navigating, right, the public piece? I do think it's a threat, but I don't think housing is a threat. I think short-term rentals are a threat.
Right, right.
Yes.
So, I think, to your point, Charles, on the lack, and I think Todd, you also commented on this a little bit. The current ordinances that we have in place, the dispositions of development, those kinds of things, I think, are threats to us currently. And so we might need to break that out. Something to think about. What happens if you create your ordinance on short-term rentals? We figure out property, and you have to have a vote on this, right?
Yes.
Because the public.
Well, the public would go for it, it's the rest of them.
But most of the people that are voting
Live here.
are living here.
Right.
Most of the people that own short-term rentals.
Don't live here.
Don't live here.
And they don't get to vote.
Yeah.
So here's the question,
Nice.
right? Well, that's an opportunity.
Yeah,
The other, the other important thing, like Deborah touched on, is the incentives, creating some sort of incentives for those people to switch over to long-term.
So we're gonna talk about some of those things, because I think those are opportunities. We're gonna define it as a threat, but
Yep.
here's my quick little spiel to you all. One of the biggest issues that we have right now, yes, lodger's tax is through the roof. It's increased exponentially month over month for the last year. What I can't prove, and what I'm trying to get the breakout of, is that our traditional lodgers have actually decreased. And the reason that that's happened is because we don't have a coordinated planning effort to guide and to channel most of the commercial purchases or most of the visitors and tourists into our commercial areas. So by that, and I know that's a bunch of blah, but what I mean is, imagine having your short-term rentals around your traditional lodgers and around our commercial areas instead of in our residents. So one of the biggest questions I always ask people is, are we a mountain town or are we a destination location? What do y'all think?
Are we a what again?
Mountain town?
We're a destination location.
destination location. Do we want to be a destination location?
How many of the people that would vote would tell you we are a mountain town?
Most of them.
What if I told you a survey would say otherwise of our voters?
Yeah,
How many retirees do we have in this community, right? And those are a lot of the people that are saying, we don't want that group.
right.
But we have a growing surge of people that are saying, no, we're a destination location, our businesses are dependent.
Yeah,
So my big piece is, how do we satisfy both? Again, back to my dad's conversation of me being able to make everyone happy, it's not gonna happen. But how do we come across with a solution that everyone can work with? Does that mean that we create an ordinance that subsidizes current owners in residential areas that have short-term rentals to make them either long-term rentals or secondary homes? Does that mean that we create new areas of short-term rentals around commercial areas and define what those commercial areas are so that our traditional lodgers can benefit from those people staying in those areas and around the commercial piece, right? And does that mean that locally we have to educate people to say, hey, you're not losing money. If you sell, the next person that comes in can't make that a short-term rental, because our short-term rental ordinance says this is where short-term rentals are, period. We don't want to push away the current increase in GRT that we've seen, but we also want to develop in a responsible way, right? So, just a thought, just a
Yeah.
thought.
The short-term rentals, they pay lodger's tax now, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there another fee that they can pay that might go to a land bank or something like that? just for
Or,
those folks?
or maybe an increase in sewer water fees for the
Should be.
short-term rentals.
So one of the biggest issues that we see, right, is when you have tourists come in, we see a huge overload on our infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Lines, sewer lines, wastewater. Water is pretty much elevated to the point to where if you're, the more you use, the higher you pay, so
Yeah.
you're doing that. But even our solid waste, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. When you're driving around and you know there's a big weekend or a big week coming through, you already know where the short-term rentals are. I can tell you on a heat map where they're at based on the amount of trash that we pick up. right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, wait a minute, why are we getting 5 calls? We just picked that trash can up or that dumpster up yesterday and it's full again.
Yep.
Well, it's because a family of 4 puts out so much waste. A family or families of 12 that are staying in that same home produce
Yeah.
4 to 5 times that waste in a quarter of the time. So imagine, and this is the load that we put on people, right? Imagine my driver in solid waste who has 27 stops for the day. And then gets a phone call that he has to go back to 5 different areas because those guys were holding on, you've seen it. They hold on to the trash bags, and as soon as it's empty, they come back and it's full. Or it's overflowing and trash is everywhere. So now I have to go send out bear mess, and instead of just them going out and picking up the stuff that the bears are actually hitting, now suddenly they're addressing trash that's all over the place because people didn't tie their bags correctly, the winds caught it. You know how much that cost me in extra time? Those are your taxpayer dollars going to pay for our tourists and their services, right? Why don't they pay for them? Another thought.
Yeah, I like that thought. When you were talking about creating an area around the commercial for the short-term rentals, we kind of tried to do that with the workforce housing over there behind Midtown, and that's when the people lost their minds.
Came out of the woodwork.
I don't think workforce housing is the best place to
Yeah.
go there, which is what we need to also have discussions on. What's the best place for workforce housing? Are they actually in our communities? Are they in different areas?
Right.
So, let's go back to the
Yeah.
topic you guys brought up really quick, and I'm gonna use the land that's now behind the middle school. 70 acres. Say the village, I'm making this up, say the village annexes it tomorrow.
Right.
70 of those acres, 40 of them are developable, right? So, let's say.
They sure caught you up to speed on everything. They caught you up to speed, you know, about all this old stuff.
It's my job to,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put 2 things in front of you just to pass around. It's not official, it's not happening, I'm just saying, what if? Imagine a 200 housing unit community, 2 and 3 bedrooms.
Yep.
Yep.
It'd be
single
awesome.
homes.
Oh, this is
You're talking
cute.
about,
Yeah, I know.
you're
I
talking
would live in
about
something like that.
a park,
Exactly,
green space,
128,000.
roads, trail systems. You're talking about teachers, I'm sorry. Okay, you're talking about teachers, you're talking about nurses, you're talking about frontline staff of people that are working, you're talking about village employees, you're talking about people that work at the inn, you're talking about county residents, all living in this
Yeah.
area. Who's comfortable with that? Right? And it's a nice community. You're not talking about trailer homes anymore.
Yeah.
This isn't that trailer, I mean, in reality, it's a
Modular.
prefab home.
Right, right.
But it doesn't look like that. It's perception, right? So how do we do that? How do we get our land bank to focus on those things? How do we get our land bank to identify one of these properties and figure out what needs to go there that meets the needs of the community? And how do we educate the NIMBYs, right? So we have 15 minutes. Lunch is ready. Do y'all want to do a working lunch so that we can continue working through here?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So
So, Becky Brooks, I think most everybody knows Becky, but probably you. She was the previous executive director. Her son works for Vail, a ski and lives in Edwards, Colorado. The area, and these are homes that they've purchased, but they're in an area that you're talking about. They have the walking paths, they have the sidewalks, and those homes cannot be sold for a specific increase in value.
That is the key.
Yep.
Creating those ordinances, creating those requirements that say you can't, so, to Vale's point, Breckenridge, and Frisco, Texas, Frisco, Colorado. Very similar to us and to Vale. What's happened is we have a resort community. They've figured out that we're gonna do whatever we can to make tourists come here. But at the end of the day, we need workforce.
Right.
So 10 miles away, we created our own cities, that in our own city, we're gonna be able to say, all right, this is how workforce lives, and we're gonna have our Walmarts, we're gonna have everything that's here, we're gonna have our trail systems. They can't sell those homes for short-term rentals.
Right.
If it's long-term leases, it has to be over 3 years. People have to be working in the community or the neighboring community in order to live there to pay the certain rents. So those are things that we have to consider and we have to discuss. Those are the things that you all are gonna have on your plates as we start doing these things. So I agree, those are ideas that we have to look at, which may be an opportunity, or it may be something that we have to look at in general as a group or on this document to figure out where we go.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, back to threats. So housing, we're gonna split up. Short-term rentals are a threat.
Yes.
What else is so short-term. So all of these are short-term. I would say that housing then becomes a weakness or an opportunity.
Opportunity.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, and we'll write down, I don't have as nice a handwriting, so I'm just gonna write STR and we'll go from there.
I was up in Canada in November, and it was interesting in Banff and Jasper, Lake Louise. They all had, just like you're talking about, housing projects put together really nice. And you had to actually work there or the national park, or you couldn't even live in the community. It was a short time. You had to be out like 60 days. Or,
Yeah.
Exactly. There was, what are you gonna do in
Right.
order to live here? Certain requirements, you don't
Yep.
do them, you're done.
Right.
I think we are so far behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
You know, when I came here in 97, tourism was here, but it had not exploded.
I agree, and I think those are things that we need to catch up with to make sure we're prepared for whatever's gonna happen in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You lost some on the ground over there
So
somewhere.
things to think about in opportunities, right? Appropriate land, available land, topography, buildable land. Threats, weaknesses,
This is,
We really can't control the topography, the,
well, but can we? Can I incentivize a builder or a contractor, no matter how much it costs, to come in and help me understand how to build a responsible watershed piece of land for building?
yeah,
Yeah, it can. It's gonna cost me a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's possible.
But that takes out the affordability component.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. But yes, it does for right now. So is it a threat or is it a weakness?
I think it's a threat.
I think it's a threat.
Okay. Well,
okay.
so. Macro cooperation. Oh, this one's different. Okay, so.
Wow.
This is available land. That's a threat. Available land, appropriate. So available land and appropriate land.
I could say.
All of the same. Okay.
Yeah,
So land will just be our big topic. Is that okay? Yes.
Now, that could be a lack of, well, I give it to James because James knows, but maybe the rest of us. I still remember Tim hauling me up on some cliff somewhere out there, and I mean, I think there's land available, like you said, but I guess you come back to what's appropriate and what's actually affordable to build upon.
Right.
Right.
And those type of things, so.
Here's so let's say you got taken out to remote pizza plant, right? And this kind of goes to the limiting areas or even the political will. In my time in New Mexico, I've done 7 annexations. And annexations are very political.
Yeah.
But they're opportunities. And the reason they're opportunities, much to PID ordinances, let's say I annex 400 acres or whatever it is of land that people say is unbuildable because infrastructure doesn't go up there. It's unbuildable because of the infrastructure, not because of the topography. Now, what happens if we have a PID ordinance in place? To your point of how do we recruit or incentivize builders to come in? To build on that 400 acres, and now Sam's big issue is, well, it's not cost effective. But if the cost effectiveness, and we incentivize the builder, not just through the PID, but through some other form, whether it's lodger's tax, whether it's a special tax, whether it's whatever, and we say, look, you're not gonna be able to sell these homes at market rate, period. It has to be at this level and under, and give us an opportunity. We're gonna have to go out to bid for that, fine. Public-private partnership. But we don't focus in, and maybe we do. Maybe we focus in on some of the tax credits, maybe we focus in on whatever. But it's a remote area that now comes back into the village. People aren't upset about where it's going at because they never lived there in the first place. It's new to the village. You now have your infrastructure. So you build 200 units out there of a master plan community and suddenly things change, right? Just thoughts to think about.
So I wanted to throw in one thing, and your comment about some of the topography issues, some of the buildability issues could be overcome if we had enough money. Okay, so that's kind of out of the box. It's kind of like a big contingency. It might work if. Well, what about another, it might work if? We are surrounded by state and federal lands.
That limits.
What about those as possibilities if we could arrange cooperative agreements, purchases, swaps?